Hey, what's up? How you doing? Thank you for tuning in to another BlackSwanRadio.com podcast. I am Rondale Jordan. This is your destination for Worldview conversation. A little something different. A little food for thought. Hope you're enjoying your day. Or you've enjoyed your day. Today, I was looking into the world. Right? Our world is two-dimensional at this point in our lives. We have a offline and we have a online life. And what dominates the human mind is relationships, right? I noticed that most everything else people kind of stray away from. Conversation, men talk about sports. Women like drama. And, whatever form of entertainment the essence is boiled down to. These two categories. I said all this to say is, I learned that one thing about people, right, is that people are just kind of naturally manipulative and inquisitive. People like to see the rise and the fall of certain iconic people, right? Because nobody wants to see someone who perceives themselves as special or more significant than they. So people, use their influences to manipulate certain circumstances. And so I'm speaking vaguely so that, you can relate to it. But specifically, people don't want to see you really fully living in your happiness, I guess. It's, too much peace. We was talking about this at work today. I was kind of joking with the ladies, and I was saying that women are anti-peace, right? That, if you walk into, a woman walks into a home and her husband or her mate is sitting on the couch watching TV, and peace. Maybe he's playing video games, right? Maybe he's reading. But not all, but there's a very good portion of women who that would irritate them. They have to say something, do something to get a reaction. And then when they get a reaction, now they can play with that reaction. They can manipulate the reaction, right? They can play it either way, depending on their mood. But it's always going to be a ping pong game that ends up with the man being the villain. But the man was just before she arrived, was in a place of peace. And, I think that we think this is an innocent thing oftentimes in relationships. She's just playing. She's just being a woman. She's just... We dismiss it, but that's the reason why a lot of us end up in problematic relationships, right? Relationship with combative partners. Because either we or they don't know how to interact with each other without being combative in some shape, way, or form. Some shape or form. What I mean is that combativeness is the way the female was programmed or was conditioned to interact with the male. She wasn't taught in healthy relationship with the male because she was most likely... It's most common that a woman is told to stay away from bad boys. To stay away from boys. Boys are bad. Boys are trouble. Boys are, a problem. They lead to babies. You see, they're programmed with the unhealthy perspective of the male species. Right? So... in her subconsciously, she has a fear and competitive relationship with men. But she's also desires, because she's naturally a woman, she come into an age where she desires the attention from males outside of her father and brothers. She wants to be attractive. She wants to know or feel attractive to other men. And this may not be let's see what I'm trying to say. This may not be for the approval of men, but it's so that she know how to gauge where she stands among men. She has to kind of practice this. She has to sense this based off of how men interact with her. So the cure to this, once you recognize or acknowledge the root cause, which is the upbringing, the conditioning in the early childhood stages between the male and the female. And I'm not really talking about in the toddler stages, in a stage before the child becomes really conscious of their biological differences from the other children. What I'm talking about is preteens, teenagers, in the ages between puberty and up. What are the messaging that the females are getting about men? Is it a dark? I was listening to one of the young ladies talking about, basically a reoccurring dream that she had, right, of running from someone who's trying to either violate her or eliminate her, and I was like, I'm familiar with this. I've looked into this because periodically I've had dreams, similarly, where I'm running, and, in my research, I found that it's kind of a signal that it's a signal of anxiety, that there's a possibility of something looming ahead, right? But in that storytelling of a dream, it's the violation. And I'm using the word violation because, I'm not really trying to go into the details, but I hope that you understand what I mean when I say violation. Violated her. And the thing is that, I think it should be definitely a part of like the wisdom aspect of a woman's mind, the way she, to protect yourself in the environments, or who and how many men she's around, and what type of signals she's trying to attract to herself, right? Which we're going to get into a little bit more here later, as far as the attraction, right? And we call it attraction for a reason. We call it being attractive for a reason, because you're presenting yourself, and just like bait, you present the bait to attract a specific type of creature, right? Character, animal, whatever you want to put it, right? And so you're using a lure. And these are feminine characteristics: being alluring, being attractive, right? And yeah, this art has been lost. This is lost. We've gotten just to a point where it's just bypassed all of that, and it's just going to the ratchetness, or, just being raunchy. And females don't really understand the full psyche of a man. That they think of us in terms of how they are, or they think that we should be. And so they think that, they can dress a certain way, and men should just treat them as a default. But that's not what happens. The way you present yourself, right? You categorize yourself. You put yourself in a category. And you have to understand that's just the reality. Wifey, toy, right? Potential, respect, fun, and that's all about how you present yourself. Now, a man is going to go either way. He will end up into an intercourse, because that's the nature between man and woman. But if you're seeking longevity, you have to, number one, be real with yourself and say, that's what I'm looking for. And then present yourself accordingly in order to attract what your outcomes, what your desires are. All right. So the problem is that if there's a lack of accountability, means there's a lack of acknowledgement of your power, your influence, your ability to choose, to accept, to attract. All right. I don't know. So this is the word of the day. We look into the crystal ball of the social media and listen to what people are talking around us. And we piece these things together, and it all boils down to relationships. People seeking something of depth, but really wanting the benefits of the shallow. Till next time, keep the faith. Like,